Hey guys, we're back again to the second part of the interview with Mr. Jesmed Suma, Executive Director of the Sierra Leone Policy Watch. And we were talking on the future of Western democracy and in Africa and the challenges. So in a second, Mr. Suma should be joining us here to conclude this interview. And if you're just tuning in, we have a link on if you're watching the replay or you're watching us on YouTube. This is a broadcast from Facebook, facebook.com/Joi John. And we'll be sharing the link in the comment section for this video. Just 1 second. Hello, Sydney. Hello, Christian. Thank you all for joining in. Hello, Emeka. Hello, Isioma. And everybody else tuning in, thank you. We have had a long day. And Mr. Suma should be joining us in just a little bit. And the first part of the video is posted on the timeline. But I'm gonna, and if you're watching this on Facebook, you probably will be seeing both of them all in one video. But we're here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Hello, Mohammed. Thank you for joining in. We're just waiting on our guest to connect. We had difficulties establishing communication, but he should be here in just a second. Okay, awesome. We see, great. Hello, Charles. Great. Okay, perfect. So good to have you back, Mr. Suma. I just introduced you to the guest. We're going to make this short. Thank you. So we were asking, the second question to you was using Sierra Leone as a point of reference here. How do the internal, or how does the internal structure of political parties have an impact on the country and the role of the National Electoral Commission and Sierra Leone?
Well, as I noted, for democracy to work, it starts with the internal structures of the political party. The parties need to practice democracies from within. They need to be able to allow their members to freely contest for positions and fairly participate in the voting process, so that through that process they'll be able to elect the best person to represent their party. And they also need to be accountable to their members. But what is happening in Africa in particular, the internal structures of the political parties are not democratic. So they end up bringing up people that do not represent the general membership of their party. And when that happens, the voters at the national level are given bad options. And that is why you see all sorts of machination in terms of these bad elements that are representing their party trying to fraud their way into leadership. And when that happens, the nation, the country itself, will end up having a bad leader that does not seek the interests of their people, who may have even rode into power not only through fraud, but actually by borrowing money, which they can refund back to those who fund them. Like when I registered my party in Sierra Leone, when I went there struggling to make it relevant, and it did become relevant, but I focused it on the issues. I spoke to the bread and butter issues of the nation, and people were gravitating towards the party to such an extent that the ruling party, which the former president put me as a target, and they found a way to arrest me and locked me up for 37 gruesome days. And each time I appeared in court, I challenged them. And what happened was that they eventually sent somebody to me to kind of cajole me into, he says, if you want your party to win elections in this country, you need to have alliances. You need to have the right people to network with. And we have political investors. That was the first time I had that name. We have political investors that can bring millions of dollars into your party if you allow them to come and ride on your party to victory. And these are agents of the former president. The first thing I told him, I said, I consider that an insult. Don't continue this conversation with me. Because first of all, I wrote the constitution of my party. If I bring this thing up with anybody within the leadership of the party, they can use that to impeach me. But because I was naive about African politics, my focus was if I allow the process to happen democratically, we will end up getting the right person. I even put conditions in terms of what makes somebody qualify as a flag bearer of the party, for which I myself, though I could have aspired for the leadership of the country, though as I considered myself the fittest person at the time, with the exception of one person, which was Dr. Kande Kola-Yumukela, who was also running, other than him, nobody else was fit enough to rule the country, Sierra Leone, than I did. But the conditions I laid within my party disqualified me from one condition, from one particular area, that made that qualification. The only person that was fit to fit that qualification was Dr. Kande Kola-Yumukela. So the president saw me as a threat, saw everything that I was doing as a threat. They planted a mole into my party. Somebody whom I protected his own right as a member of my party to follow the democratic right, but he used that right and weaponized it against me.
Okay. So now, currently, now, what are some of the reforms you would like to see in your political system in Sierra Leone?
Well, this speaks mostly to the West. If you want to sponsor democracy in Africa, please don't just focus on elections. Please don't just go election days. You put observers in Abuja and in Lagos, and then you give a result, you endorse a result that represents the entire of Nigeria, Onitsha. You don't have no observer there. You go to Canon State, you don't have no observer there. And then you have the audacity to dictate to us that this election is free and fair. When you want to practice democracy, you need to examine the internal practices of the political parties themselves and put conditions down that link to aid, link to policies, link to bilateral relations that ensures that those practices are respected within the political parties before you even get to the national electoral process. But because—
No, I understand there's I was asking you earlier that I understand there is there are protests calling for the resignation of the chairman of the National Electoral Commission. What led to that? What was the one incident that led to that?
Oh, not one incident. In fact, we just had an election in 2018, last year. And during that election, there were so many malpractices. There were 3 major political parties contending for the leadership of the country. And our constitution says a party has to secure more than 50% to have ultimate, to form a government. And because there is this new player called Dr. Kande Kola-Yumukela, a former UN deputy executive of the UN, who abandoned his American citizenship. He left his UN job, well-paying job. He's well known around the world. He says, I'm coming to use my ideas to fix my country. The president saw him as a threat. So it became clear that the 3 parties, his party, which is the National Grand Coalition, the party that I have joined now, and the 2 oldest parties, the Sierra Leone People's Party, which is the ruling party now, and the one that went off, which is the APC, the 3 of them were the one contending for runoff. So which means what happened was that because if no party secures 55%, the first 2 will have to go into runoff. Because this new player is among the race, is part of the race, they realized that he was destined to be one of the 2 parties that are going to go into runoff. But the 2 old parties didn't want to take that risk. So they went into a covenant to rig the election against the new party, just so that the 2 old parties will be the only ones to go into runoff. And that is exactly what happened. The National Electoral Commission was a part and parcel of that conspiracy. So we saw that later when we saw that the videos and audios and other evidences were being revealed after the election, that this is what happened to fraud the nation.
Now, okay, you are also contesting for you're a candidate for chairmanship of the National Grand Coalition Party in Sierra Leone. What are some of the changes that you would like to bring into the party if you win that election for chairman?
Indeed, I am running for the chairmanship of the National Grand Coalition. I have abandoned my own party, the National Progressive Democrat, because I observed that both parties have the same ideology, the same principle, the same progressive values. And
was this a merger? Did you merge? Was this a merger between the both parties? Or
that's going to be
just abandoned
secondary.
the one
But
you
I
formed?
decided to join the National Grand Coalition because it has a better chance of realizing those dreams of our founding fathers. So I'm contending.
And what happens to the party that you formed?
The party that I formed is called the National Progressive Democrat.
Is it still active?
Yeah, it's still active. But I decided to join the National Grand Coalition because it's more structured, it's more nationwide as compared to my own party that is not that big enough. So I'm vying for the chairmanship of that party because I know the fundamental guidelines and principles of not only the party, but I know what it takes for us to have victory in 2023. I know exactly how the elections were rigged against us in 2018, and I want to make sure I put the starting guidelines in place to protect those votes, because it has become clear it's not the amount of vote that you get, it is who decides that vote. And that is why the fight against the National Electoral Commission is crucial. That is why, because we have now known that a commissioner has compromised his position, compromised his integrity, has no respect for the constitutional values that made him the commissioner. That is why we are insisting that he should be kicked out. But because this mindset of pauperism that prevails in our governance, including within the National Electoral Commission, that is why they are insisting on going on with a by-election that is happening in next month, irrespective of the fact that the three major parties in opposition that constitute more than 50% of the voting population are not participating in that by-election. So which means they are denying over 55% of the voters the right to participate in a by-election because of the pauperism mindset. It means we don't respect your views, we don't respect democracy, we don't respect your constitution, we don't respect the constitutional laws, we don't respect the three political parties that are not participating, are boycotting it. We are going to go ahead because we are pauper. We have the pauperism mindset. It is either our way or no way. And that is why we want the international community to take note of that.
Okay. Well, now President Julius Bill has just marked his first year in office. What is your assessment of his leadership in Sierra Leone in the past year?
Well, to evaluate his leadership has to be looked from three angles. One, from the perspective of his 1 year as compared to the previous government. In so many other, from different level and from different categories, if you measure his 1 year performance to the previous despotic leadership that we had, that was running a mafia enterprise in the name of a government, his performance in 1 year is exceptional. It's very commendable. In the area of fighting corruption, I believe the only country that can match us now, it's Tanzania, perhaps Nigeria.
And Ghana.
But, well, Ghana, I'm not sure about that. But in terms of fighting corruption, Sierra Leone is up there because of President Bill's 1 year leadership. Now, but when it comes to the other areas, fiscal policies, monetary policies, it's zero. It's less than 50%. From zero, from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the least, I give them a 3.5% on fiscal policies and monetary policies. In other areas,
let's talk about healthcare. Can you give me an insight to healthcare? That is one area I'm very particular about in Africa.
Yes.
What is the healthcare system
they are
like
doing tremendously well, but it's too soon to evaluate them. They have allocated tons of money during the budgetary allocation from education, healthcare, and Ministry of Finance. They are the three different branches that a lot of money was allocated for healthcare. In terms of revenue generation, they've done well. But in terms of expenditure, that's where the fiscal policy comes into place. The expenditure, in terms of addressing the macro economic issues of the nation, relating to the bread and butter issues of the nation. The people are really hungry right now in Sierra Leone. Hunger is part and parcel of what we are facing today because of the fact that they don't know how to manage the economy. In that aspect, they are failing. Now, if you compare what they ought to have been doing if we had the right leadership like the National Grand Coalition, assuming it is our party that was in governance today, because we have principles that guides the way we formulate policies, principles that guides the way we appoint people to leadership, principle about the way we focus on the socio-economic problems of the bread and butter issues, our performance this year at this day today will have been twice as much as what they are performing right now. The people will not have been worrying about buying a bag of rice as it is today. Today, Gari, which is produced in Sierra Leone, the price has tripled since these guys came to power. It will never ever happen under our own government. The cost of transportation has doubled under them. It will never have happened under our
We
own
may
government.
have to bring you back in, Mr. Suma. This is powerful. We may have to bring you back in to continue this conversation. I'm afraid that this is all we can take in this segment, but we would love to learn more. We're going to have to schedule. I know you're very busy. You have a hectic schedule. It was hard to get a hold of you. Yeah. I do thank you for joining us on this program, but please, we will try to reschedule you to continue on this and shed an insight. We're going to be looking into the economy in West Africa. I know you're by training, you're an economic policy expert. So I know that you have a lot to share on that. So we're going to have to reschedule and bring you back in. We cannot let you go this way, but I'm afraid this is all we have to take. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much
us today.
And in fact, when it comes to the economy, there are aspects that has to do with the sub-region and the challenges we face in confronting China, in confronting the European Union, in confronting other economic blocs, whilst we are still languishing in one-man show, in one-man country show. There are certain specific bilateral trade or regional policy ideas that we need to begin to consider in West Africa as a whole, if not Africa as a whole. But we'll come to that, and we'll revisit
that. We'll revisit that again in another session. Well, I thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. We'll go ahead and post the video, and feel free to share. And if you're watching this on YouTube, this is a broadcast with Mr. Jesmed Suma. He is the executive director for Sierra Leone Policy Watch, highly sought after political commentator and policy advocate in Sierra Leone. And it was hard to get a hold of him. Thank God he's here. But we will reconnect with him at another time and continue this conversation. I thank you all for watching.
Thank you.